my God, you're never gonna believe it. Contrary to popular belief, the Dems are doing the work. And it just so happens that I have 8 stories to share with you today. Daily Dems doing the work, making noise, and fighting back, day 168. Meet Jimmy Panetta. He represents California, District 19, and he is this week's repping the rep. And his district is actually one of the bluest in the state. And I know I just did someone from California, but with the ICE raids, I couldn't leave just yet. Last week, he did a press conference with healthcare professionals about how awful the big ugly law is. John Garamendi was on ABC 7 Bay Area to talk about the big ugly law and how David Valadao voted for it, even though he insisted he never would. I love how much Garamendi focuses on constituents that aren't his. I recognize them. On Thursday, I went live on IG with Mike Levin, and most of our conversation was about what's next. Well, it turns out that CR is coming back sooner than it feels like. Definitely a must watch if you want to know what's going on in Congress. Rick Larson is working with Maxine Dexter because several of her U.S. citizen children constituents were kidnapped, and she's having trouble tracking them down. I'm sure this happens a lot, that members of Congress work together like this, but we don't necessarily see it most of the time. Hillary Skolton posted this myth versus fact about the big ugly bill. It's really easy to understand, but also pretty detailed. Eric Sorensen was on All In with Chris Hayes talking about the Texas flood, and he's the best person in Congress to talk about it because he's a meteorologist. His solution would be that the Weather Service has their own safety board, like transportation. Something you probably already expected was happening. Don Beyer participated in the Unite Here Local 23 rally, where the union that is in charge of food service at the Capitol was raising alarm about the new vendors, because they have yet to be rehired. Jamie Raskin and Glenn Ivey were also there. And finally, Alyssa Slotkin introduced the Visible Act, along with Alex Padilla and Cory Booker. Visible stands for Visible Identification Standards for Immigration-Based Law Enforcement. I've heard people talk about how Padilla and Booker introduced it, but not so many people talking about Slotkin. And that's one way in which people think that members aren't doing the work, because when they're doing the work, they're not included in the reporting. And so I don't fall into that. The co-sponsors include Gary Peters, Richard Blumenthal, Tammy Duckworth, Maisie Hirono, Patty Murray, Adam Schiff, Tina Smith, Chris Van Hollen, Peter Welch, and Ron Wyden. So those are just some of today's fighters. And I hope this served as the reminder you needed that Dems are indeed doing the work. If you made it to the end of this post, comment with 7 words to help the algorithm. And a knife and fork, because the Capitol better honor the contract of these union workers. And if you watched or read any of the stories, comment with what you learned. And an eye, because we need to know the identity of every single ICE agent. Our voices are a superpower, but only when we use them.